Today I want to talk about course correction. There's an old human myth, I guess we'll call it, false myth, that humans don't change, can't change. It's not true, of course. We see all the evidence that we can change. Yes, we see the evidence that many do not change and will stay exactly the same right till death. Yes, absolutely. There's lots of visible examples. But we're also, when we see that, we have to take in all the people that have drastically changed, that have life events. There's all kinds of people that have had major life events, and they change from it. And we've seen a lot of people completely turn their lives around. So we know it can happen. So that's the first thing is knowing and believing that you can change anything you want about yourself. And that's how we change the world too, by the way. It's not just a nice cliche that sounds good. It's true. But I wanted to tell a little bit of stories about to prove it, because anybody can just say you can change, and I want to prove it. So I'm going to tell two quick stories here. Um, we'll start with the dark story, and then we'll end with the less dark story. So we'll go to extreme first. So I'm going to show you an extreme of why I feel, and I know in my heart people can change, because I've seen it. When I was in high school, I think it was around grade 10, without getting into a big long backstory, um, through some grueling farm work that I did to make money during the summer, I ended up meeting this Latino guy who was, I would say, he looked very young, but he was much older than he looked. And he was from Central America, I won't say where. And he looked maybe 25, but he was actually like 35, 40, something like that. Anyways, he was this tiny little petite guy, all smiles, like genuine smiles, and genuinely happy-go-lucky and quiet and kind and always trying. And I met him at this farm job, grueling stuff, and he was just such a kind, sweet guy. And from working months together, I started to get to know him really well, and we were like two peas in a pod. And then one weekend, he uncharacteristically decided to get drunk, invite me over, and he got drunk. And once he got drunk, uh, what turned out started was supposed to be a fun party weekend turned into, geez, I don't know, it was a long time. It had to be hours and hours, probably 4, 5, 6 hours at least. I don't know, a long time ago, but hours and hours crying and sobbing, getting this confession from this kind, sweet little man who confessions of he was in his country, like many, he was scooped up in a van playing basketball when he was young and thrown into a little mini civil war. They come and go, and he got thrown into one side. That's how they recruit. Ask anybody from Central America. That's very common throughout the decades, and regardless of the country. And so he was one of them. And but he didn't just get thrown into the regular military. He was trained as a special military assassin. So his job wasn't to go out with troops every day and go fighting. His job was to, late at night, slide into enemy encampments and target the top brass or anybody who was an asset on the other side or who was targeted, and he would slip in and murder them in their sleep or wherever. I mean, it wasn't always at night, but he went on, and he was just this stealthy assassin. And he did it, up close and personal too, not far off in a distance with a gun. So that really takes a toll. So he was sobbing, and it got out once the war, that little mini war ended, and everybody went back to their lives, and which is common with these things. Word got out of what you did in the war, and word got out of what he had done and what side, what his actual role was. And so his entire family disowned him So he was a man alone, where his family, he had nobody, no friends, no family, no one talked to him. And this had been happened way decades before. So this man, where a lot might have, who knows what he might have done with no family and friends and with all that guilt. But what he decided to do was dedicate the rest of his life just trying to make amends. And that's who this guy was. And it wasn't just talk, and it wasn't just, I had already seen it, but it explained a lot of who he was because of what I had experienced for months. Is this guy literally, he wasn't just kind, his whole mission was to make amends, to help any living thing within his vicinity. So we were on the same mission. The difference was I was born on that mission. He went through horrific trauma and did horrific things to then decide to become a servant. And he was. He didn't want anything from anybody. He didn't even want praise. In fact, it made him uncomfortable because that's not what his whole thing was, just to serve. And I don't know if he's still alive today, but if he is, I'm sure he's still serving. And he was grateful for the chance to serve. He didn't want anything except just another day to help people, and that's all he did. So I know people can change because that's a 360 change. So that's a really dark story. Now let's go a little bit lighter and a personal story about myself. I can attest, as I've had lots of changes, but I'm going to go way back to a very early change. So this is testament that it doesn't matter what age, you can change. And we also think in society conditions and traumatizes us that the only way people learn is to treat them like children, punish them. And you learn from punishment. But here's a perfect example of how it wasn't punishment that turned me around. Luckily, I was blessed, but it was a life lesson, and I was present for the lesson, and so I'm going to share it with you. So when I'm guessing, but when I was a young kid, maybe 10 years old, I would guess, I discovered, and I was always a loving servant. I was born that way, always caring for others and whatnot. But when I was 10, I discovered, I don't know, I can't remember what the first thing was, how I would have discovered it. I'm assuming it would have been in a variety store, but I discovered how easy it was to steal. And I grew up in a very thrift, my parents, it was only one was earning money, and they grew up in the Depression, and they had 7 kids, so there was no extra money. Everything was hand-me-downs and whatnot. So, so there was really, as far as I was concerned as a kid, that was my only choice. And then I went for it one day and discovered how easy it was. And then soon what I discovered was that I was really skilled at it. I actually became a master thief at the age of 10. For real, a master thief. I developed the skills quickly, and it was like a fish swimming in water or a bird flying. And it also helped, and this is what I say, why the best thieves don't ever see jail. It's because the reason they're good thieves, now I'm talking like, master thieves, so really high-end thieves, we would think of jewelry thieves or whatever. Anybody who normally, who doesn't get caught, it's because of I think, and that at least that's because where I was coming from as a 10-year-old, why I was so good was because it was the fear of getting caught. So if you don't want any chance of getting caught, you're going to plan that and plans within plans, just like all these movies we see now, the big heist movies. It's that kind of thing. You just plan it within a plan, because you do not want to go to jail. So the more you plan, the better your chances, right? So anyways, so that's what I did was I started to use my noggin, and I started to see how easy, and I started even ripping off department stores to the point where we had this old store called Woolworth, and and it was the time of Star Wars in the 70s, and I was never going to get Star Wars except for maybe if I was lucky, a couple on Christmas or birthday. So I decided to use this new skill, and I pointed my sights on Woolworth, and I scoped the place out, and they had a system at the time, which was the best they could do at the time, but they had a system where they used mirrors. So they had a guy, so that there was a booth above the whole store. Woolworths is a department store, by the way, if anybody doesn't know. But the whole length of the store was this upper level with this window. Sorry, I'm pointing off camera. So there was this upper level above the whole store that ran across the whole store, and there was this big long window that ran across the whole thing, and there were guys in there, kind of like those things you see at sports events where all the commentators way up top. It's like that. It's like a special booth, but it ran the whole thing in the store, and the window ran the whole thing, and that's where security was. And from those windows, they would go look at occasion. I don't know if they would have video cameras back then. I don't know. I would say no. I would have noticed. But they were using all these round, which you still see in some variety stores, those round mirrors. But they had them everywhere. They had them at the end of every aisle. So they were using the aisles both on the floor and up top, using all those mirrors. So what I did as a 10-year-old is I used the mirrors against them to look at to watch the security. And they made the mistake of having two different entrances. So I went in one entrance. And what I would do is I would come in and drop my, I know this is getting pretty diabolical for a little 10-year-old who never done anything wrong before, but I guess I really wanted those Star Wars figures. So I dropped the bag, and then I would just leave it a little bit open, and then I would just quickly, somehow I figured out, don't spend long. I would just look like I was just quickly stopping to look at it for a second, and then I would put it back, and then just before I turned, I would just quickly tip it off the hanger, and it would straight drop into my bag, and then I would pick up my bag and go out. So I'd ting, ting, ting. So within seconds, I would just look like I was just happened to be walking through the store with my bag and just happened to just quickly be looking about at a couple things and then walked out the back. And I did it to such an extent, they moved all the Star Wars figures to the front counter. Unheard of. So now to get Star Wars figures, you had to ask the cashier for them. So yeah, I became this really great little master thief. And so here's where, luckily, the universe gave me a lesson to turn it around. And it was a hard lesson in the sense, not for me, but that for somebody else that I had to watch. So here's how I turned it around is there was also this little variety store. So after this, there was this little variety store, as there were back then in these neighborhoods where you still see them on occasion, where a house is converted, where the bottom is a variety store. And so this family bought the house. They lived in it, and the husband and wife both worked because they had to pay it. And so they had their grandmother run the store, and she was really elderly and starting to get a little foggy. And so but she was really sweet, and she was running the store. So she would love to chat with kids and stuff. So I started chat with her, and because of my skills, I started stealing. We would talk for quite a bit. We started to become. She loved talking to me, and she talked to all the kids, but we became close. And I authentically did love talking to her, but I also didn't think twice about stealing while I was doing it. So yeah, so this went on, I don't know, for a month or so, and I was robbing her blind. And then one day I went, looking forward to talking to her. I wasn't, just to be clear, I wasn't going there to steal. I was going there I did enjoy her. But I was stealing, because why not? So, anyways, I go that day, and I see and I hear there's a commotion, and I see at the back, and that poor old lady was crying. And he didn't mean to, but he was giving her shit. Her son was giving her shit because the amount of money that was going out of the store over the month or 2 months, however long it was that I was doing it. And I think there might have been other kids doing it too, but I was definitely doing it big time. This poor woman, who really that's all she had, or she was holding down the fort for that family. It meant a lot to her, and it meant a lot, these interactions with these children. It was the perfect place for her. And he wasn't trying to be a jerk, but he had all his pressures coming home from work and finding this out. So yeah, he was raising his voice, and she was crying, and he self-corrected, but still. And as soon as I saw that, whoa, my heart just ripped in half, and I immediately, it was like, I did this. I did that. This is my fault. I hurt that sweet old lady. See, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. So I decided right there. I was already a born servant, like I said. I was already serving stuff. I just got into stealing on the side, and I didn't equate the wrongness of it. So this gave me the lesson. So I vowed never to do that again, never to take advantage of people, lie to people, or steal or anything like that. So yeah, I stopped stealing, and not only did that, but I ended up for months and months afterwards. They ended up moving, I think, and sold the store. But for months afterwards, they did give her another chance, which is good. They didn't just say, that's it. And that would have been traumatizing for us. They gave her another chance. And so every day, I kept going to that store now every day, but to help her and to keep watch to make sure nobody else stole. And so I helped her every way I could to redeem herself, which she did. And not that she did anything wrong. It wasn't her fault in the first place. But, just to get it back to the way it was. And so I loved listening to her stories, and I loved talking to her. And I loved that I could be of service to her, although it still sucked that I caused the problems in the first place. But anyways, and so I did. So from that day forth, I got back on the path of a servant, and I never go back off. And that my life changed from that point on. That did it for me, man. I didn't need punishment, and I never did get caught before that, and I never stole since. And yeah, and of course I've been serving too many to count my whole life since. So that was a pivotal point for me. It caught me. I was on a certain path right from birth, but then I just started we're off to the side, and then life lesson got me right on. So we can self-correct. Sometimes the universe will do it for you. Sometimes it's just signs. Sometimes it's not as big. I mean, that's obvious. That's the universe going, hey, hey, hey. Sometimes they're more subtle, but either way, we know when our behavior is not serving who we are. So we can self-correct at any time. I self-corrected at the age of 10. That man did a self-correction that is almost unheard of. He literally went from being a killer to being a servant he didn't want love, he didn't think he deserved love, he didn't want someone to tell him it was okay. He just wanted to serve, and it was a gift to him to serve. And so yeah, people can change. And sorry about all the blurring. I must have this on a weird setting, but I realize it's phasing in and out there a little bit. Or it's my Jedi powers. These aren't the droids you're looking for. All right, so that was a bit of a long video, but I did cram in 2 stories. So whether it's a small thing or big things, it doesn't matter what it is with you that needs changing, but you can change. You can alter, you can course correct, even if you've gone down the wrong path. You have the power. You just have to decide to. Love you.